This is a long exposure shot that I took at the Botanic Gardens here in town about a week before Christmas. And I knew going into this evening, so it was kind of an event that the Botanic Garden hosted where they invited families to come down and have snacks and make a craft and see this model train. Now, normally this model train never operates at night. I think it only runs for a couple hours on 2 Saturday mornings per month. So you never get to see it at night. And it's not like huge. I mean, it's, I don't know, 200 square feet for the whole thing, maybe bigger. I'm not sure, but it's not like some massive, crazy model train installation. It's just a model train they have in the garden. And most of the time it's just the tracks. And then a couple times a month, they put the trains on and you get to see the trains. But at this particular event in the evening, in mid-December, they had an event, and I knew the train would be running, and it was part of this event. So I thought, I'm going to bring my Fuji and try and get some motion trails of that train. And I kind of had an idea in my mind of what I was going to do, but I didn't know exactly how it would turn out because I've never seen this thing at night. So we get there, and I brought the Fuji, and I brought my little Gorilla Pod, my tripod, which is great for stuff like this because it's super small, super light, and the legs are really flexible, so you can stick it wherever you want. And I set it up and took some long exposure shots, and I also I used a 2-second delay timer to eliminate any shake from my hand. That Gorilla Pod is nice, but it's not the sturdiest tripod in the world. So if you're going to take a long exposure shot, it really helps to use the 2-second self-timer on your camera. And I took a few shots, and they weren't quite turning out how I wanted to. And then I realized, oh yeah, I can use drive mode and take several shots in rapid succession. So that's what I did. And I walked away with about, I don't know, a dozen pictures. And I didn't want to spend all night doing this because I was there with my family, and I didn't want to miss the rest of the event where my kids and my wife were. So I took one that I really liked where you can see not one but 2 trains, and several of the shots, turns out you could just see one train, but here you could see both. I like the motion trail here. I like that the headlight on the front of the train kind of keeps on going. The rest of the train has not really yet caught up with it in terms of this particular exposure. It looks green on the right-hand side because that part was green for the entire duration of this shot, whereas at the front of the train, there was nothing to really be in the frame or be captured on the virtual or the digital film because that, how can I say this? As the train was moving, the headlight was super bright, so that showed up. The rest of the train was dark and did not show up on film because it was really dark at night. So anyway, I'm not explaining this very well at all, but it works out pretty well in this picture. And it was fun to take this. I did shoot this in RAW, whereas normally I don't shoot in RAW on the Fuji because I knew it would require some post-processing. And it was also tricky to get focus because I wanted to shoot with a wide open aperture or decently wide open and still get a long exposure and have a little bit of depth of field. For a shot like this, shooting wide open isn't always what you want to do because I don't know, it's just not, it's hard to shoot a shot like this wide open, especially if there's a lot of light because you can't get a long shutter speed. Here, there wasn't much light, so I can get a longer shutter speed with a 2.8 aperture. It would have been nice to shoot at f2, but then I would have ended up with like a 1-second shutter, and that's not long enough. I realized later on that I should have used the ND filter and shot wider open to get more or a shallower depth of field, but that's just how it goes. Next time we're here, maybe I'll try that. As it was, this is a fun picture to get. Big shout out to the manual focus and the focus peaking on these mirrorless cameras. If you haven't used a mirrorless camera with focus peaking, it's really cool, and you get to see exactly where your picture is going to be in focus, and that really helps on a picture like this or any picture where you just really want to nail focus manually. So fun picture to get, fun opportunity to have because they don't usually run this train at night. So it was neat. I enjoyed taking this, and I hope you enjoy looking at it. Oh, and side note, I asked the guy who was running this if it was an O gauge. He said it was a G gauge, which I hadn't heard of G gauge, but there you go.